Again, and I wanted to bring you the very first video from our STEM Saturdays 2024, which will begin on Saturday, March the 23rd in our office from noon to 2. So if you'd like to sign up, I have a number at the end of the video. You can call and just give me your name and your age and a few pieces of information, and we'll get you started. Our very first lesson is going to be on modeling human hand function through robotics. We've purchased all new laptops and some robotic hands and some brand new things that we're going to use for our STEM videos, so we're really excited. First, we want to look at the hand and see something about structure and function and the evolution of the human hand. So your hand operates almost like an independent sensory organ. When we think of sensory organs, we think about the eyes, the nose, the ears, but your hand is almost like a sensory organ. You can feel different temperatures. If you put your hand down in a bucket of ice water, you can tell the difference between putting it down on top of a heater. So that there's different nerve endings there that send those different signals to your brain. You can detect uneven surfaces that you cannot even see with your eyes. If you run your hand across it, you could feel that. So we're going to look about the nerve endings in your fingertips later. But how did all of this start? How did that part of the hand, the hand in humans come about? So when walking on 2 feet meant that hands were no longer needed for locomotion. Instead, we can use hands for transporting food. If you're picking apples off of a tree, picking berries, you're going to carry the food with you, holding babies, scooping up water to drink, gathering the materials to build a shelter, holding different objects, maybe a spear or a slingshot or something like that. All of those things that we needed our hands to do. And those are what are called advantageous adaptations in hand structure, and that prevailed as natural selection took its course. Natural selection is an evolutionary process that Darwin talked about, and it's sort of that survival of the fittest, but also when we talk about adaptations that are advantageous to the species will be passed on from generation to generation. Those that are not will be deleted out. So your hand was an advantageous adaptation. And this is where the evolution of our brain and our anatomy occur together. So as we start using our hands, we have to have a part of our brain that functions to tell us what to do with our hands, to feel the different temperatures, to allow all of those things to happen. So your brain starts to evolve with your hands. The balance between your hand bones, tendons, muscles, and nerves was constantly being refined, as were the hand's increasingly sensitive sense of touch and the brain's ever more sophisticated oversight of motor coordination. Throwing a ball, even catching a ball, all different kind of things like that. Hunting would be an example of motor coordination. We can trace the evolution of our hands back to the very beginning of primate ancestral chart over 70 million years ago. Flexible hands and simple stone blades allowed gorge dwellers, people that dwelled down in a gorge, to occupy what's called a new ecological niche. And they could move from the gorge to the savanna, and then they called that home. And then they could become carrion eaters. Carrion is meat. Wild meat specifically, but they became carrion. So when we add that meat to the menu, that's a crucial step on the way to becoming human, because up until that time they'd only eaten plants. And so once we have this adaptation of agile hands, then we can start to kill meat and eat meat and cut the meat and prepare the meat and do different things like that. That increased protein intake led to better health and an increased size of the brain. So protein helps to feed your muscles, it feeds your brain, so you have different things that are advantageous in eating that extra protein from the meat. There's some indication that the evolution of the hand had a significant influence on the development of speech. So the research I read thought that the very first thing would be people would point to different things that they wanted, or to the sun, or to a baby, or whatever it was. And then that led them to try to find words for the things they were pointing to. So those gestures, they're an important component of expression, and they precede, which means they come before, and they accompany speech. As you notice, when I talk with my hands. A lot of people do. They just use that to emphasize what is said or to convey emotion. Someone could make a gesture with their hand, and you may know what they were feeling without even them expressing that to you verbally. Many scientists assume that gestures, sounds develop together over millions of years to create increasingly complex forms of communication, mutually supporting and supplementing each other. And we even have a complete language, the American Sign Language, where people that cannot hear or speak, or both, one or the other or both, will use their hands to speak. And so that's a whole different use for your hands to speak. So the hand is a triumph of complex engineering. Our arms and legs are both what are called pentadactyl limbs. Penta means 5. Like the Pentagon has 5 sides, a pentagram. So pentadactyl, this just refers to your fingers or your toes. The hand gives us a powerful grip, but it allows us to manipulate small objects with great precision. The versatility sets us apart from every other creature on the planet. And so that's where human beings started to take off. And I've read a lot of articles and seen a lot of things that they now measure, in your age and how well you're doing as you age with grip strength. So a person who has a tighter grip strength is more robust, is in better health as they age. The hand has one of the strangest arrangements of muscles in the body. Most of the movements in our hand are controlled by muscles that aren't located specifically in our hand. They're in the forearm. And I have a little drawing here, but you have your ulna here where your pinky is and your radius here where your thumb is, and those muscles are here. And then we have tendons that attach to the bones in your fingers, right? These long tendons, they pass through your wrist because there's a gap there. And so when we squeeze these muscles, we can move our fingers. There aren't technically muscles in our fingers or our hands. And so that gives the finger movement strength that wouldn't be possible if all of those muscles were attached directly to your fingers. So the strength comes here also within your forearms. That's where the muscles can, become bigger. That arrangement allows us to do so much. And then, I don't know, I saw this on TV one time, but I watch it a lot. Strength of mountain climbers, I've seen someone be able to take their finger and pull up their entire body weight with one hand, with just using their fingertips. Also, if we think about training the entire body, that single finger can support that. People that play music and the fingers and all of the dexterity that comes there, that is important for your brain. That's how your brain controls those things. The thumb is you also hear a lot of times people will say, we have an opposable thumb. That means it can touch all of our fingers this way. So it moves, right? And that's the most important digit of all of them. 40% of your hand's capabilities come from your thumb. You couldn't grasp without your thumb. And if you're going to lose one of your fingers, it says later on that the index finger is the best one. So the skin at the tips of your fingers here, at the fingertips, is very specialized. And so if we would slice down our fingertip like this and look at it, we could see fat cells that are close together here. And those are cushions. And then there's an enormous number of nerve endings. Have you ever gotten a paper cut? And that hurts really bad because there are so many nerve endings in the tip of your finger that you need for touch for specific purposes, but then that's where a lot of pain signals can be sent to your brain. And there are 4 main types of skin receptors that are found there. You have light and deep pressure, touch, pain, and temperature. So those are all different types of skin receptor nerve endings that are found in your fingers. They contain the densest nerve endings in your body and the richest source of tactile feedback. Tactile means touch. So if you know a blind person, they read by those little dots. It's called Braille, and they run their fingers over those dots, and those are words, or letters and words. And so all that feedback goes to their brain, and they can learn to read that way. Like any other paired organ, whether it's our eyes, we have 2, right? You have 2 feet, you have 2 legs. Each hand is dominantly controlled by the opposing brain hemisphere. So your right hand is controlled by your left hemisphere, and your left hand is controlled by your right hemisphere of your brain. So it's just the opposite. Just like your eyes, because your eyes cross in the back, your optic nerve crosses. The bones. We looked at the muscles, so I did this little drawing here of the bones. The word hand is sometimes used by evolutionary anatomists to refer to the appendage of the digits of the forelimb. That's what these are. The adult human hand weighs about a pound. That's not very much. Your brain weighs 7 or 8 pounds. So your hand weighs about a pound. And if we look at the different digits here, they're broken into the specific bones. And in our STEM lesson, we're going to build a model of this, and we're also going to look at a robotic hand to see what we can program it to do. But these are distal. Distal means distance, far away. So the ones at the top are the farthest away from here. They had the distal, the middle, and proximal. Proximal means close to. So these are all phalanges. All your fingers are called phalanges. Then you get down into these bones here. Those are called the metacarpals, right here. And then we have the carpal bones that make up your wrist, and there are 8 of them, and all the names are here. You don't really need to know. And what I did here was to label the bones for you. So if you're looking at the hand, your radius, which is the larger bone here, is the thumb side, and the ulna is the pinky side. And that nerve that they talked about, or the tendons that run your muscles in your forearm to move your fingers, run through that gap right there. The skeleton of the human hand consists of about 27 bones. And so supination, which means we turn this way, pronate, we turn that way. Those are just 2 anatomical terms. You're just rotating your hand about the axis of your forearm, over and down, over and down. Those are added to the 2 axes of movement of the wrist, the ulnus, and the radius. And they're sometimes considered part of the skeleton of the hand. So this is the hand, but sometimes we can consider those 2 bones as being part of your hand. And I wanted to write down some interesting facts. Some of these facts are strange, but I told you there are 27 bones, but there are also 29 joints and 123 named ligaments. That's a lot of ligaments in your hand. What sets those apart, again, are our opposable thumbs, because our thumbs and our fingers work together, and that doesn't happen in any other primate. You cannot get a tan on the palm or the underside of your fingers, so you can't tan your palms or the bottoms of your hands here. And then most people know this, but fingerprints are completely unique DNA imprint, and it's different for every single human being. That's why a long time ago, if you got arrested before DNA, they would try to check for fingerprints so they could match it to you. There are tons of words that include the word hand. I don't know why they put this in there, but handy, handwriting, handbag, all of those compound words. The average hand length for an adult woman is 6, that would be from here, your wrist, to the tip of your middle finger, is 6.7 inches, and the average for a man is 7.4 inches. So, of course, men have typically larger hands than women. Fingers don't have any muscles. We already looked at that. Tendons are moved by the muscles in the forearms. Men also tend to have a longer ring finger than index finger, and women is vice versa. They tend to have a longer index finger than a ring finger. Hand surgeons say that the index finger, this one, the pointer, is the best one to lose if you needed it. You don't need it. Remember we talked about the thumb, 40%, so we need to keep our thumb. Your fingernails can show your state of health, and they can indicate problems such as a mineral or vitamin deficiency, liver trouble, thyroid, anemia. If they are brittle, pale, or spotted, sometimes you get those little half-moon shaped spots in them, then that could be a vitamin deficiency or something that's wrong. So you could tell that maybe something in my body is not functioning properly. The color of the nails and those little small moons that are at the bottom of each nail, they can identify the quality of oxygen level in your bloodstream and blood circulation. And a lot of times they'll monitor that if you're in the hospital, and if you're super saturated, and how those little moons change could let them know you're not getting enough oxygen. Our fingers are even more sensitive than our eyes, because we talked about those nerve endings, and the fingertips have all those large number of receptors, and they all send different messages to the brain. The vein on your ring finger, and these are Latin words, is called the vena amoris. Amor means love, right? Vein of love. It has a direct line with your heart. So the vein that runs here, and that's why we wear an engagement ring on our left. Sorry, this is my left hand ring finger, or this finger, right? Because that vein goes to your heart. So it's a symbol that you love the person you're engaged to, we hope. And then nails will stop growing after death. Fingernails are actually modified hairs. And I wrote the name for that on there. There's a protein called keratin. It's the same protein that makes a horse's hoof. It's the same protein that makes what's called the carapace, the outside of a lobster. Everybody's seen one of those, or crab legs, and you have to break it in order to eat them. It's a tough protein, and your fingernails are made of that protein. Julius Caesar ordered the thumbs of captured prisoners to be cut off. That makes a lot of sense because then they can't do anything with their hands, right? They couldn't escape. 6% of all men and 9.9% of all women are left-handed. It's not very many. That's a small percentage of people in the entire population. And it also takes up to 6 months for your fingernail to grow from root to tip. One other thing that I just wanted to add in is if you've ever known anybody that has 6 fingers on each hand, that's called polydactyly. More than 5. They're not pentadactyl, they're polydactyl. And that's a dominant trait. So all of us that have 5 fingers on each hand actually are double recessive for that trait. We have the recessive gene, not the dominant gene. So that's a pretty interesting thing that I've learned along the way. So the very first STEM Saturday, as I told you, is going to be March the 23rd here in our office in downtown Clarksburg from noon to 2. You can call 304-326-7762 for details. And then we're gonna start with our brand new laptops and our robotic hands and hopefully get into a lot of technology in this STEM camp. And we look forward to seeing you. Thank you for watching our video.